That's in
Love
the
that.
recording.
Get home from school, turn on my TV. Who are these friends staring right back at me? Now that we're older, why don't you come over and go back in time with me? 90s babies nostalgia.
Hi, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Jessica.
And this is 90s Babies Nostalgia, where two fully grown millennial women usually rewatch or watch for the first time iconic tween entertainment from the early 2000s.
Just to be clear, we are not sponsored by or affiliated with any of the shows or channels that we discuss. We just really love talking about TV. And today we are watching Heartstopper.
We're mixing it up. Yes, I said usually in the intro because usually we are on our early 2000s shit. You know, we've been going through Disney Channel. We've been doing this podcast. We've been recording for over a year. It's been almost a year since we put up our first episode, which is wild to think about.
So crazy.
But we have gone through even Stevens, Lizzie McGuire, and That's So Raven. I definitely thought we were going to get through more shows in a year. And
me too. I think part of the problem is we only have the bandwidth currently to go every other week.
Yeah, and we're struggling at that.
Correct.
And so we still like the format of our show and we'll probably still use it most of the time, but we wanted to switch it up and like do something that we wanted to do, you know?
Yeah.
So
we needed a little excitement, and this show brought both of us a lot of joy, so we just wanted to talk about it.
I've seen it 3 times. Jessica's seen it 4 times.
Yeah.
And both of those are like within the first month of it being out.
Yeah.
Plus, like, we're both bisexual and it's Pride Month when we're recording this. Hopefully it's still Pride or almost just past Pride when we put it out. Look, I don't know if we're going to be in the every other weeks because I might amp up the editing just to get this out during Pride. Okay, we'll see. I'm not holding any promises.
Yeah.
But and this did, like, even though this is a new show, I think that for a lot of millennials it does strike a certain chord though of almost like longing for our childhood days and what we wish we could have had, or also some people feel triggered by the events that happen in it. But anyway, that's like a lot. Do you want to get into introducing what Heartstopper is? I'm sure everyone knows because it has been huge online, already renewed for a second and third season. But for anyone who's been living under a rock, we should still introduce it, I guess.
So it is an 8-episode series on Netflix that is based on a webcomic that then turned into a set of graphic novels by Alice Oseman. And if you hear us reference Alice throughout this, she uses she, they pronouns, so I'm sure we'll go back and forth. So I just wanted to let everyone know that. But there's currently 4 published books in the series, as well as the ongoing webcomic. I did go and read the webcomic because I watched the show 4 times and I was like, Jess, you cannot watch this a 5th time. It's a little crazy. So then I read the webcomic to fulfill the hole in my heart. Because I told myself I couldn't watch it again. And the webcomic goes a little bit past where the current graphic novels are. So if you want to know more about the story, I highly suggest going and reading the webcomic. It's on Tumblr, so it's very easy to access. But I would say the Netflix show covers about the first
book, right?
About the first book. I would say the first book in a bit. It's not 100% true to the webcomic. It is rewritten for TV. You learn a lot more about all the characters. So the main focus of the graphic novel is Nick and Charlie, who we will introduce, who's the main couple in that the story follows. And then you kind of learn about the friend group, but the Netflix show really allowed Alice the opportunity to explore the other characters' stories. So you get a lot more of Tao and Elle, a lot more of Tara and Darcy, just a lot more of everyone else in the Netflix show
Mm.
because she has the opportunity to kind of expand the world.
That's interesting. I haven't read any of it, but I thought because comics are so much more voluminous, for lack of a better word, TV is very tight, that I expected the characters to be more developed in the comics.
Mm-mm. I would
Hmm.
say, honestly, the characters we're seeing in the show are pretty spot on personality wise, and they feel very true to how they are shown in the webcomic. But you definitely get a little bit more of the um, stories of the other characters. The webcomic is almost 100%
Nick and
Nick and
Charlie.
Charlie, which is
Okay.
her intention with it. That, she talks about that and she says, she did have to kind of rethink her brain on like how to be a screenwriter because
Hmm.
obviously Netflix hired her on to be a co-producer as well as a screenwriter in conjunction with other writers for the Heartstopper series, which is why I think for people who were fans of the graphic novels prior to it being a Netflix series, like love the Netflix series is because like Netflix wanted to do it right and Alice made sure they did it right.
Yeah, I think that's something that makes it really special. And my understanding is they added a little bit more detail from the webcomic into the books. And then they added a little more detail on top of that into the show. Like, I know we get 2 original characters in the show that are not in the comics or in the books, at least 2.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think having Alice involved makes a huge difference because you really pay homage to the source material, and they also do a lot of the little graphics in throughout the show of like Alice's thing is these leaves flying around during
Mm-hmm.
certain moments, and you
Or
get
the
to
fireworks.
yeah, the little electricity lightning type stuff, and
Yes.
you get to see that on top of the film. And at first it feels very like kitschy and like, or kitsch, whatever, quirky.
Yeah.
My roommate and I watched it together the first time and we weren't sure how to feel about it, but then like immediately it just kind of was really cute, and I understand that it definitely was there more so for the fans of the comics.
Yeah. And that's what I like is that I feel like they weren't just trying to make a Netflix show to make a good Netflix show. It's an amazing Netflix show, but they really tried hard to make it something that the fans of the comics would love too. And so they included, items like that. And a lot of the fun scenes that we'll talk about
Mm-hmm.
are taken
Directly.
exactly from the
Yeah.
comic. Like they took the comic and made it live television. Like it's just
Mm-hmm.
crazy how much they nailed it. Like Alice, for really important moments, like she kept the like what Nick and Charlie say to each other
Mm-hmm.
100% the same.
Yeah.
Like they didn't change up the dialogue at all during
Mm-hmm.
very important moments.
I've heard Alice refer to them as like the Heartstopper moments,
Yeah.
which I is fantastic. But we should really get into it because
Yes.
we've been talking around it a lot, but we should
Mm-hmm.
probably explain. We're going to do our usual sort of format. We're going to probably do it a little bit more like a movie episode. If you've listened to any of our movie episodes, we'll go through each episode and give our notes, but we're not going to be as detailed as we usually are because it's it's an 8-episode miniseries, and I know there are people who tried to consume it only in chunks, like each episode a day or something like that, because they wanted to give it the time that they felt that it had earned because it was so good. However, um I watched it for the first time just straight through, and I know when they did the cast and crew screening they watched it straight through because it does feel like a complete package. It's like chapters of a novel that you want to get through and finish.
Mm-hmm.
So I view it almost like as an extended movie, but
Mhm.
anyway.
Mhm.
Um, so we start off our principal cast. We have Nick Nelson, played by, oh my
Joe
God,
Locke.
no, that is Charlie's
Oh,
actor.
Kit Connor. Kit Connor.
Kit Connor. Thank you. We have Kit Connor who plays Nick Nelson. He is our leading man of we have two leading men of the show,
Yeah.
but Nick Nelson is like the popular guy in school. He's really good at rugby.
Mhm.
Uh, and we start off following Charlie Spring as he starts a new year and has to sit next to Nick in practical or something, in like a homeroom type of a class.
Form group, which is
Yeah.
my understanding that it's the equivalent to homeroom in the US.
Charlie's or Nick. Okay,
Mhm.
restarting that. Kit Connor is one of the only people in the cast who had been acting for a while, even though they are all age appropriate. They're all around like 16 to 20. I
Mhm.
think he's 20, maybe
18.
18. Yeah, 18.
18.
But he was in Rocket Man playing young Elton John,
Mhm.
and most notably, and I think he's been in theater as well.
Mhm.
Charlie Spring is our other leading man, played by Joe Locke, who comes from the Isle of Man and had done nothing but like school theater.
Yeah, it's his first ever acting credit, and you will see this a lot with this cast.
So we know from the beginning that Charlie Spring is out at school. He's 15 years old. No, he's 14 at the beginning, which
Mhm.
blows my mind.
I know.
Nick is a year older than him, and Charlie is openly gay at school. We don't get from the show context from, we get hints at it to context from the comics that it wasn't necessarily his choice to come out,
Mhm.
but as far as we know, like, he is out and he has been bullied for it, and now he's coming back to school and everyone's, his friends, his family, his teachers, they're all really worried about him because he didn't speak up for himself when he was bullied in the past, and now
Mhm.
he's sitting next to this very cute rugby lad.
Yeah.
Where
Mhm.
do we go from there? I guess so. We learn that Charlie has a friend group. We're introduced to them very early on as well.
Mhm.
Do you want to introduce them?
Yeah. So Charlie's friend group is, give me a second. We have Elle Argent, who is played by Yasmin Finney, who second ever acting credit, but first ever acting credit since 2005. So really the only thing that she's known for. But she is a trans actor. Um, awesome that we have a trans actor playing a role as a trans female. So it was really, really great casting, and I know they made an effort to do so. But Elle, we learn she transferred over to the girls' school. So you kind of see the friend group go through this transition of them all being together at Truman Boys School, and now Elle is going to Higgs, which is the girls' school. Which
And
my
the schools are,
understanding, they're like across the street from
they're like
each
right next to each other because the boys and girls hang out before and after school,
other. Yeah.
which confused us at first watching it. But yeah, and we don't see Elle in the very beginning. I don't think we see her until episode 2, but we hear about her from the beginning because we see Charlie with his other friends, Isaac and Tao, who we'll introduce shortly,
Yeah.
at the picnic table at lunchtime, and Tao keeps buying Elle's apple juice.
Mm-hmm.
And I know on the casting note, they mentioned that they specifically put out a call for a trans woman of color because that was the minimum for casting her, and they really struggled. It was like a global casting call or something, and they struggled to find someone, and they found Yasmin at like the last minute from her TikTok or something like that, and she
Oh, wow.
just like hit it out of the park and very much seems to have a lot in common with Elle and resonate with her.
Yeah. And then to finish off the friend group, we have Tao Zhu, who's played by William Gao. Also first ever notable acting credit.
I think
And
he's
then-
modeled before.
Yeah, and he has a music project with his sister as well. So he's like in the entertainment world.
Mhm.
And then we have Isaac Henderson, who is an original character to the show. He is not a part of the friend group in the web comic, who is played by Toby Donovan. Again, first ever acting credit. He was like working at a Sainsbury's or something before getting this role, so it like really changed his life, which it's really cute to watch him talk about.
I haven't watched it yet, but I have seen in my recommended on YouTube that he does have a channel with a bunch of behind the scenes vlogs from the show.
They're very cute. I would highly recommend.
Love that. And so that's our friend group. We have Tao, Isaac, Elle, and Charlie, and they're a very close-knit bunch. Tao is actually like the token straight. Isaac doesn't profess any romantic feelings of attraction towards anyone, usually just seen with a book, and Alice has confirmed that they intentionally wrote Isaac to have Arrow Ace vibes, and that'll be more explored in further seasons.
Yep.
But which Arrow Ace is a romantic asexual, if you don't know.
Which is also what Alice identifies as well with. So
love that.
Yeah.
And I know Alice has written that into other books. Before Heartstopper, Alice had written other books and chose to write Heartstopper as a graphic comic because it just felt like it lended itself to that more than a novel. Anywho, we also very quickly are introduced to another original character of the show, who is Ben.
Yes.
Hope.
Yes. Who's played by... Yes. Who's played by
Sebastian. Sebastian what?
Croft.
Thank you. And Sebastian Croft, if you go on his Instagram, I don't know if it's changed, but last I saw, his bio was like #1 Ben Hope hate account.
Yeah.
He hates Ben with every fiber. He is also, I believe, an openly gay actor.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I love about this cast, is that they pretty much all identify with the identities that they're representing. And he is someone else who acted as a child. So him and Kit Connor are two like established actors.
Yeah, established. We'll use that term loosely.
Yeah. And Ben is introduced very, very early on as someone who Charlie's like texting as he goes into school. They're going to hang out, and Ben cancels on him. And we can tell that they have like romantic things going on. They meet up at school, and immediately I am creeped out. Ben is creepy. Ben is like a slimy motherfucker. And he's like, I missed you over the holidays. And and Charlie wants to have a whole conversation. And he's like, so how were your holidays? And Ben just starts making out with him. And it's like, get to know our boy Charlie Spring, because he's cute and he's 14 and he wants to do more than just make out with you. Sorry, I had to get that out.
No, and they kind of have, so in this first episode, they kind of have, which is when we're introduced to Ben Hope, that you kind of see that it's this relationship where Charlie, it's a little obvious that he maybe wants more, but is settling for what he can get as the only openly gay kid at school. And Ben is struggling with his sexuality and is using Charlie, you can say.
So, go ahead.
I was going to say, and then during the episode, you see Charlie leave school and he sees Ben making out with a girl who he presumes is his girlfriend at the school gates, and he just texts Ben, like, we can't see each other anymore, like,
because he didn't know. Ben never told him. Ben wasn't ready to come out, but he never told him that he was seeing anyone else.
Yeah.
And so each episode has a title that's very simple and tells you exactly what the theme of that episode is. Episode 1 is Meet. And that's really what it's about. It's about Nick and Charlie meeting each other and getting to know each other. So Nick starts or Charlie starts developing this little crush on Nick. You can tell really early on.
Yeah.
Can't tell if Nick's just being friendly or also kind of crushing. Like, he just has this great puppy Labrador smile and he's so happy. There's this little montage of them laughing and talking about how Nick's doing his maths homework on his way to class, and he exploded a blue pen and had got ink all over his shirt. And Charlie like tells his friends that he might have a little crush on Nick, and they're like, Nick is the straightest guy in this school. Are you out of your mind? Which I think is hilarious because, especially like as an American watching this, everyone is very well cast for their identities and the age that they look. So maybe it's like me not getting the straight vibes because I'm American and older, but watching it, he does not seem like the straightest guy. Like, he's just a small, lanky British ginger like the rest of them.
I definitely think they casted more for like the golden retriever vibe, which is like really in tune with the web comic. And they did that excellently because I think that Nick gives off a very, and Kit Connor really plays into that golden retriever vibe that Nick is supposed to have. And I think part of that lends into you being like, yeah, it makes sense that this is a bisexual character.
Don't ruin it.
Oh, okay, you can cut that out.
Yeah, and Kit Connor actually auditioned to play Charlie, and then he got he was like, which is hilarious because I am such a Nick in retrospect. So
yeah.
Anywho, we see them getting to know each other. Everyone's like, Nick is super duper straight. Don't get your hopes up, Charlie. Like, we don't want you to get hurt. And that's really where it comes from. His friends get super annoying. Tao bothers me. Also, side note, Tao has the worst hair ever. They made it true to the comics. I absolutely detest it. But the actor who plays him, fantastic looking with the right haircut. Like, it is day and night. It is so confusing. But so they're all like that. And one day Charlie's in PE and he's running really fast. That's like his thing. He runs fast.
It is his thing.
And Nick sees it. And so he goes up to Charlie. And this is when we get our first, every once in a while, we get these little scenes that are like what they're imagining is happening or going to happen. Sometimes what they want to happen, sometimes what they're scared will happen. And so Nick walks up to Charlie, who is at his locker, and he imagines with pink hearts and everything. Nick being like, I have to tell you, I'm gay. I'm in love with you. I want to be with you forever. And then in reality, he just says, you should join the rugby team.
Yep.
And he does, because he wants to hang out with straight best friend Nick Nelson. And he tries to suss out if he is straight or not.
Yeah, you kind of get from episode 1, and especially as we continue early on, that like Charlie has feelings where at first he's like, okay, he's definitely straight. I know he's straight. And then he's like, I don't know, because he kind of flirts back with me. Like, I don't really know what this is. So you can tell he's really trying to like feel it out and see if there's any hope here.
What there is a Ben hope. So
yeah,
they're in rugby. They have rugby practice one day. They leave the locker room. Ben's texting Charlie like, I just want to talk. They meet at the library, I think. I don't know, some little like corner.
No, it's like a music room. It's definitely...
No, the music room is where they make out the first time.
Nope, that's the library. It's like the music block. It's like detached from the school. I'm telling you, it's not the library.
Anyway, they meet up after rugby practice, and Nick sees Charlie kind of walk off looking a little concerned, so he follows after him. And Ben is being like, why are you like this? Like, I told you I'm not ready to come out. And he's not hearing Charlie. And then he's like, starts forcing himself on him and like kissing him really aggressively and not letting Charlie out. And Nick comes and like grabs him and throws him off and tells him like, Charlie said to go away, go away.
Yeah.
And so this creates this dynamic where Nick already knew Charlie was gay, but now he also knows Ben is gay. Ben being another cool guy at the school in Nick's grade, and that this is a secret. And it starts getting things in motion, and this is when Nick and Charlie start messaging. I don't know if it's the end of the first episode or the start of the second one. They start messaging on Instagram. All the kids message on Instagram on this, which I think is kind of fun because I message younger people on Instagram usually, and some of my friends. And Charlie trying to suss it out. He's like confiding in him about Ben. Nick is so mad about Ben. He's like, don't ever talk to him again. And then he deletes it. And he's like, that guy sucks. And Charlie's like, thanks for being the good straight friend.
Yeah, the supportive straight friend.
Yeah. Which is like so obvious, my dude, but it's fine. And that's episode 1.
Yeah.
Which was more detail than I thought we were going to go into. But, you know, at this point, I don't know where this is going. I knew I was going to watch a cute little gay show. But I'm still not sure where it's going yet. But I'm intrigued, and I'm not putting it down. That's my note.
Yeah. I think the first time you watch the show, if you don't watch 4 episodes in a row, what the fuck are you doing?
Oh, and you cannot stop after the 3rd.
Yeah.
So, episode 2?
Yep. Is titled Crush.
And here we meet Elle. Episode 2 centers a lot more around Elle's experience. She is going to the girls' school now because she has come out and is living as a girl. Kudos to her. She doesn't really have friends. She's shy. She meets a couple of girls, Tara and Darcy, and starts hanging out with them. She later finds out that they are the school lesbians, which she just like susses out. It's very obvious. As soon as she met them, I was like, lesbians.
Yeah. And you can tell she gets the feeling, but she's like doesn't want to impose because she just like, you really see her struggle in this episode to make friends, and the teacher is like, Elle, you need to make friends. And then once she kind of gets connected with them and starts hanging out, you can tell she's valuing having friends over anything else. So she doesn't want to ruin that friendship. So, you know, like there's a few moments where she's like, are they, aren't they? And then finally she asks.
She's like, I don't know if I got the wrong impression. And they haven't really come out. Everyone at the school knows that Darcy is gay, but they don't know about Tara, and they're friends, but they've only really told like a small group of people. At the same time, we see Tao worrying that their friend group is constantly changing because he's worried about Charlie and Nick hanging out all the time, and that Nick's gonna hurt Charlie because he was bullied last year, and he's bummed that Elle left. They schedule a movie night, and Charlie can't come. I don't even remember why anymore. But I just remember Tao gets super annoyed that they can't come. And then
the movie night is not in this episode.
Really?
Yep. Nope, it's not in this episode. It's in the next episode.
Oh, because it's the party.
Yep.
Okay, well, anyway, we see Tao getting stressed.
Yeah, and you do see that in this episode. But what you also see in this episode is we kind of see the like blossoming of Nick and Charlie's crush. And so they're sitting in class form group, whatever they call it, and they're chatting, and Charlie mentions like, oh yeah, my family doesn't have dogs. We don't have any pets. They don't like animals, which like what? How do you just not like animals as a whole? But Nick's like, you should come over to my house and meet my dog Nellie. And so Charlie comes over to Nick's house, and it's like their unofficial first date. And they hang out with Nellie, and they're playing video games, and then it starts to snow, and they have this beautiful, flirty, throwing snowballs at each other and taking photos, and it is just so cute.
It is. And Joe is really good Joe and Kit are both great with their faces. I think it's easier to clock Kit's because he goes through, Nick is the one that's questioning his sexuality in this show, and Crush is where we start to see him do so the second episode. But Joe is a little less obvious with his facial work, but he's very much like smiling, very big all the time. He's just happy kid in this way that you kind of can't tell if he's intentionally flirting or if he's just being happy hanging out with his friend. Like, we know, obviously, but you can't tell if it's intentional or not. And if it would be clocked by Nick. And we see, I don't know if it's when Joe's at Nick's house or if it's when Nick's at Joe's house, because Nick does come over to Joe's as well. But there's a point where, what?
You're saying
Joe instead of Charlie?
Charlie, but I get it. I'm following.
But there's a point where they're sitting on the couch together.
Yes.
And Charlie's fallen asleep. And this is the end of the episode, pretty much. And Nick is like thinking about putting his hand on top of Charlie's. And you see these like electric animated sparks come out. And then he folds his arms and he's like flustered and looking around. And then at the end of the episode, is there more to this episode or can I get to the end?
So I do want to say, in between the like unofficial snow date and the like Nick coming over to Charlie's to watch a movie is when we kind of see Tal get into that overprotective friend mode. When Tal's like, hey, Nick, I'm pretty sure. Nope. Hey, Charlie, I'm pretty sure Nick has a crush on a girl named Tara from the girls' school. So that's when this is first introduced, that maybe Nick is into a girl named Tara. And so Charlie now has that in the back of his mind, but Nick still comes over to watch the movie. And there's that cute kind of moment of, you see Nick like wanting to hold Charlie's hand, but he doesn't. And he's truly like questioning, like, why am I feeling this way?
But at the same time, we have Elle befriending Tara and Darcy, so we know Tara is in a relationship with Darcy, is a lesbian. And
I don't think we learn that until the next episode, but it's heavily hinted in this episode.
We know that they're together in this episode. By the end of it, I think. And then I think in the third one is when Elle is like, I can confirm that she does not like Nick back.
Yeah.
But so at the end of this, we get this great song, Why Am I Like This, by Orla Gartland, who wrote this song years ago. She is a musician who started on YouTube, and this was the first song the producers knew they wanted to include in the show. And it's actually about her social anxiety, but so many people relate to it. And it's just like overpoweringly, the soundtrack to this whole show is fucking fantastic.
Yes.
But this song,
I think we need to have a whole chat on that after we get through the episodes.
This whole song just like overpowers, and you just hear, why am I like this? Why am I like this? Why am I like, over and over as Nick is like looking at the Am I Gay surveys, which I always get as ads on YouTube on my work computer. It cracks me up because like, yes. And he's like Googling quizzes to take to find out, and it says like 42% gay or something like that.
62%.
Okay, I got the two.
It's important.
And that's how it ends.
Yep.
It's lovely. It's such a great depiction of a teenager this day and age questioning their sexuality and trying to figure it out online. And Nick does that throughout the series.
Yeah, you really see him go to the internet to like answer a lot of the questions that maybe he probably does have people in his life he can talk to about it, but he just finds more comfort in Google and comfort in the internet, which I think a lot of people, Gen Z, which is what this show is depicting, but even millennials, we didn't have it quite as much, but I think that it's very true. Like, you don't know who to ask, so where do you go first?
I I questioned my sexuality, but not in such an explicit way because sexuality isn't a big thing for me
Yeah.
necessarily, but I was educated very much so from Tumblr. I was so much on Tumblr, and like you got a freaking social education on that site, especially in
Yep.
like 2012.
Yep.
Uh, so episode 3,
Kiss.
it's such an exciting episode. When we saw Kiss come up on the screen, we were like, "Oh my god, it's coming!"
Yeah.
So,
And this is why I love their episode titles, because you're going into it knowing what you're getting into, which is the same feeling you get reading the webcomic, because all the titles in the webcomic are exactly the same. It's just a one word of like, hey, this is what's going to happen in this chapter, this is what's happening in this chapter. So it leans itself to give you the same feel that the webcomic does, but it also doesn't leave you guessing what's coming up. You're like, okay, this is what we're getting into, and I'm here for it.
You don't know. You don't like. There's some angst, but you also know the good thing's
Yeah.
gonna happen.
Yeah.
So, in Kiss, it is Harry something's birthday.
Yeah, Harry. I don't know. I just wrote down Harry.
Harry's another rugby lad and a bully.
And an asshole.
Yeah. We see him. He's one of Nick's friends, and we don't see him until episode 3. And then we get more Harry than I would like after that.
Uh-huh.
And he's going to have a really big birthday party because it's his 16th, I think, and he's rich. So he rents out this whole hotel, and he's telling everyone that they can invite cool people. Well, you're looking at me like that.
It just doesn't feel like a hotel, but they do call it a hotel, so I guess we'll call it a hotel. It's
yeah, it's got a bunch
feels
of
like a
ballrooms.
mansion.
Yeah. And Imogen, who we also meet around this time, is one of the girls at the girls' school, and she often hangs out with Nick and his friends in the morning before school. And so she hears this invitation of like, you can invite cool people, and she's like, does that mean you can invite me? And Nick's like, sure, you're invited. I think you're cool enough. And we can tell already that Imogen likes Nick. And then in form, Nick invites Charlie to the party. And this is where the movie night thing comes in, because it's supposed to be their friend movie night, and Charlie can't come because he's going to Harry's birthday party, and Tao is upset because Harry's an asshole, and why are you bailing on your friends just to go to some stupid party? And he's like, well, Nick invited me, and I want to go.
And we can do a movie night literally any other freaking night.
Yeah, and then hilariously, there's like so much drama in the group chat about this, and then Isaac's like, can't go, I'm sick. And they show him like very much not sick, sending this text about it. So it's just, we get this sweet moment of Tao and Al having their own little movie night and talking about the friend groups and all the things changing, and she's telling him about her new friends and stuff. And that's sort of overplayed with Nick and Charlie at the party.
Yep.
So there's lots of hype around this party. We keep hearing, oh my God, fucking straight boys. They're in the locker room beforehand, not because of, this is unrelated, this is before the party. They're in the locker room because of rugby, and they're like, oh, Nick, Tara's gonna be there. She's so hot, like, whatever. Didn't you kiss her like 3 years ago? They kissed 3 years ago. Why is this a thing? Why? They were
when they were
like
13. Yeah.
And like, didn't you always like her? Then they were like, oh, and Imogen's gonna come. Like, you have 2 babes and you can't even be bothered. And Charlie's just sitting there like listening, like trying to decipher.
Except they would say 2 babes if it was an American show, but because it's not an American show, they say 2 proper fit chicks? I don't think they say chicks, but they describe them as proper fit, which I think is really funny because like we would never say that.
Yeah. And I did not Like, I wasn't sure if they said babes or not. I just couldn't remember what they said, but it's to that effect. And then we go to the party, and we
Mhm.
briefly see Charlie's dad, who really is not in this show very much at all, but he's in the car just like, you let me know if anything's bad, you know? And Charlie's like, don't worry about it. Nick's gonna be there. It's fine. Which is kind of, we see him do that a couple times. And so he goes into the
Mhm.
party, and Tara is there, and they're all pressuring Nick, and Nick's happy to see Charlie. And then they're like, look, it's Tara. And Nick goes up to Tara, and she's like, hey, Nick, I'm a lesbian. And he's like, that's cool. I have a gay friend. You know Charlie Spring? And she's like, yeah, I know Charlie. That's cool. Gay people, am I right? She's like, so you and Charlie are getting along, huh? And that's pretty much that.
Mhm.
And then he goes back to hang, or while all of that was happening, Charlie's like kind of upset, so he wanders off. So now Nick is running around the party looking for Charlie.
Mhm. But I think so. While Nick is running around the party looking for Charlie, we have
Mm-hmm.
like a brief moment where Charlie runs into Ben and
Mm-hmm.
kind of like reinforces that Ben just needs to fuck off. And then you also see this really beautiful moment of Tara and Darcy dancing at the party and choosing to share a kiss with one another in front of all their friends. And you can see them kind of like leaning in and like, are we sure? Are we not? Do we want to do this? Yes, let's do this. And Nick is like watching from across the dance floor, and he, it's his first time, or at least the show leads you to believe it's his first time seeing like two gay people like enjoying a very intimate special moment, and it's just shot really well. And all of this is happening while Nick is searching for Charlie. He's trying to find out where Charlie went.
This shot of them making out,
Uh-huh.
he's
And
standing there
dancing.
watching them smiling. A little creepy, but okay, I get it. You're having your gay awakening. He's lit up in like bisexual colors. At the same time, behind them, there's lights directly coming from where Tara and Darcy are, and they're coming out in rainbow colors, strobing. And like, the first time I watched this, I looked at my roommate and I was like, this is borderline offensive. It's so fucking gay.
Oh, I kind of love it though. I think it's such a cool scene.
A lot of people really love it, and I get it. I get why, but
Yeah.
it's just like so in your face gay, which like
Mhm.
is something to love about it. But I'm like, there is no subtlety here
Sure.
whatsoever.
Sure.
Um, and at this also around while Nick's running around looking for Charlie, we get, I think, an understated scene. Okay, moment, hashtag justice for Imogen. I really like Imogen. She gets a lot of crap online. And we get this scene with her where she does tell Nick on the dance floor that she likes him, but she just says, like, I just wanted you to know you don't have to say anything back, which is, I think, actually really mature for a teenage girl.
Mhm.
Because usually,
Imogen handles everything in this entire series so
so well.
maturely. Yeah.
Yes, I love
Yeah.
her, and I relate a lot, but that's another
Yeah.
thing.
I'm not shocked she gets crap online only because she doesn't exist in the webcomic. And I think some of these new characters, because you kind of see the same thing happen online with Isaac too, is people are like, why didn't you put in Aled? And Alice is like, I have a whole entire novel written about Aled. Like, there was no way I could fit his story into the who
The
Aled
show.
is, who Isaac. They basically swapped in the friend group. So in the webcomic, his name's Aled. It's now Isaac. But she couldn't, like, Alice couldn't fit his story into the show. And so you'll see online people are not the biggest fan of Imogen and Isaac. And I think it's because those are brand new characters to the Netflix series that were not part of the webcomic at all.
That's interesting. I've only ever seen love for Isaac because of the Arrow Ace representation and like the way that he always has a book. And
Yeah, you'll read. Yeah, I've read a few that are like, oh, I wish it was Aled. And then Alice is like, there was no way. Like, I couldn't fit his whole story into a Netflix show. Like, that would be its own Netflix show, you know?
So we get these moments as Nick's running around this chaotic mansion
Party.
hotel party.
So there are a lot of people there. I'm like, did they both invite the whole school? Like, I don't.
I feel like yes. And things are happening. Imogen says she likes Nick. He doesn't know how he feels about it. He sees Tara and Darcy kiss and he's like, I've awakened. And then we see Charlie and Ben have a confrontation and Charlie really stands up for himself. And then Nick finds Charlie in this like abandoned ballroom.
Nick finds Charlie back where
that's right.
he originally left
couch.
Charlie. Yep, on the couch.
He does. And then they go, it's really loud in here. Let's go somewhere quiet. And so they go to this ballroom. And they're like, how did Harry get this whole place? He's super rich. Small talk. And they're sitting next to each other on the floor. And somehow Charlie, the master sleuth, gets into this discussion about he tells him about Ben and how he stood up to him, and then they ask about crushes or something, and Nick says he doesn't have a crush on a girl or something like that, and Charlie's like, oh, so no, he asks if he has a crush on a girl or something like that. I don't know. Nick's like, what makes you think it's a girl? And Charlie's like, would you date someone who's not a girl? And Nick's like, I don't know. And he's like, would you kiss someone who's not a girl? And as they're doing this, we see their pinkies just slowly getting closer and closer.
And their shoes.
And he's like, I don't know. And then Charlie's like, would you kiss me? And he's like, uh-huh. And then they have a kiss, and it's lovely. And they have fireworks. And then Harry ruins it. I'm leaving that to you. I feel like I've been doing a lot of explaining.
Well, I thought you wanted to go fast, and you're going very much in detail. Yeah.
It all feels important.
It does all feel important. I agree. Harry ruins it, so then Charlie runs away and has his dad come and pick him up, and you see another very cute moment with his dad where he's like crying into his dad's like shoulder, and his dad's like consoling him but not like pressuring or asking any questions, and it's just very sweet. And Nick is kind of continuing to look for Charlie after dealing with Harry. That's what happens.
Well, so earlier we had seen Harry, we didn't mention, like, say some shit to Charlie. He was like, what's it like being gay or something like that? And so he's coming through. He ruins it. He doesn't catch them. He's just shouting like, Nick Nelson, come out. Where are you?
Yeah, why are you hiding from me?
Yeah, and Nick's like, that's homophobic, Harry. Like, and I love that. Every time Harry's being a dick, Nick says, that's homophobic. Which, growing up to us, would not be like a way to shut someone down, but it does shut Harry down. Because, like, Gen Zs know it's not okay to be homophobic.
Yeah.
And he's like, it was just joking. Like, Charlie knew it was just joking. And he's like, yeah, okay, whatever. And Nick runs off. And then Charlie's gone. And that's the end of the episode? No. That's not the end of the episode. Charlie thinks about messaging Nick. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have pressured you. I'm sorry. But he doesn't message him. And then the next morning, he wakes up. And there's the doorbell rings. And he opens it. And there is none other than Labrador Nick Nelson.
Golden Retriever.
It's the yellow lab, a golden retriever. They're the same thing.
They're not.
In the rain.
It's
raining. It's pouring rain, and he's just standing there in his sweatpants at the door. And that's the episode ending. And you're like, I can't stop there, and you just gotta keep watching.
Correct. And then you move on to episode 4, Secret. And so this episode obviously starts off right where the last one left off. So you hear Charlie's mom kind of be like, hey, we have to go over to grandma's. I didn't know Nick was coming over. And Charlie's like, yeah, neither did I, mom.
And she's like, you could at least get out of your pajamas.
Yeah, like really just giving Charlie a hard time. And so Charlie's like, you're getting soaked, come inside. And so then Nick comes inside. Nick starts to have the conversation with him, like, so about last night, like, I didn't mean to run away. No. Nick was like, I shouldn't have run away. Harry was calling for me. And Charlie's like, let's not have this conversation here. Let's go up to my room. So they go up to his room, and Nick starts over, and Charlie interrupts him. And that's when he goes into the, like, I shouldn't have pressured you. Like, I don't want to ruin our friendship. Like, I'm sorry if I made you feel any sort of way. Like, that was never my intention. Like, it's more important for me that we were friends. I should have never kissed you. And then
Nick kisses him again.
It's so cute.
And it's a very deliberate, like, grab your face and give you a big proper kiss, yeah, so that Charlie shuts up and knows that he was not the only one who wanted to be kissing at the party. Mm-hmm. And then Charlie smiles afterwards because he's happy because he got a kiss.
Mm-hmm. And then we get a very iconic moment to the show. I feel that a lot of fans like love is then you get kind of Charlie and Nick continuing the conversation, and Nick is sitting down on Charlie's bed, and he's like basically explaining how he wants to keep this a secret for right now.
Because he doesn't know how he identifies.
Yeah, he doesn't know how he identifies. He doesn't know how he feels. And he is sitting there and he's like, I'm just so confused. I'm having a proper full-on gay crisis.
And I love that he knows that term without being gay, like knowing he's gay. Yeah, it's fun. And this is where you start to wonder, like, what turn is this going to take? Because we are drawing parallels between Nick and Ben, and you can tell Ben is thrown in to be that parallel negative possibility of, like, they're going to keep it a secret. Mm-hmm. Is he going to mistreat Charlie like Ben, or is he going to do right by him? Mm-hmm. And then Nick leaves. And this is one of our Heartstopper moments where you hear Charlie shout, wait, and Nick turns around when he's got his umbrella and that Charlie gave him, and he's like, did I forget something? And Charlie's like, sort of, and he just runs up and kisses Nick on the street. And Nick's like so happy.
He just
so
has
this cute smirk on his face. He's like blushing, and Charlie goes back to his room. The only other thing I remember about episode 4 is the rough-ass rugby game.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think we can, like, this isn't a big Heartstopper moment or anything, but it's important to mention. They have a rugby game
against, like, an athletic school.
Yeah, Charlie is only there to fill in for when other players can't be there on the team, and so this is the first game where Charlie actually has to fill in. It's against, like, actual adults because it's like a specialized athlete school or something, like Amanda just mentioned. It's something weird. The game goes horrible. It gets called because the weather conditions just got too bad and they were losing by like a ton of points. And at the end of this episode is when you see Imogen ask Nick out on a date, and all of his friends are hanging around, and he just like feels very pressured to say yes. And you can tell it's an internal battle where he's like, I don't want to say yes, but he does say yes to Imogen.
And Charlie's friends came to support him. Tara, Darcy, Elle brings Tara and Darcy to introduce them to the friend group. Elle and Tao are there when Nick says yes to Imogen, so they're aware. And also right before this, Charlie got super injured, and Nick's like close to him in the hospital. And like
It's not the hospital. It's like a
The
room
nurse's
of the school.
office.
Yeah, the nurse's office.
Making sure that he's okay, and like you can tell they're touching a little bit more than usual. And Isaac comes in and he's like, so and so is looking for you. And so Isaac like kind of knows what's up, and Charlie's like, don't worry, Isaac's not going to tell anyone. And Charlie's like apologizing like I ruin everything, and Nick is like, stop apologizing, literally I'm ruining everything, like shut up.
Yep.
And then yeah, he says yes to the date with Imogen. And end episode. This one is like the most iconic moment, followed by the least memorable plot line, because it's just like muddy sports.
Correct.
So, episode 5, Friend.
Yep.
So, Imogen, so it starts off with Nick ready to reject Imogen in their like morning meetup before school. He's like, so about the date Friday, and she's like crying because her dog died. And he just like cannot bring himself. And so they continue their date, but then he goes to form, and Charlie invites him to his birthday party, which is the same day as the date, and it's at the bowling alley just with Charlie's friends, not even Tara and Darcy, just Tao, Isaac, Elle, and now Nick, which he also clears by his friends. And Elle is like, I assumed he was coming, and Tao is like, ugh, why does he have to come? Like, I still don't trust him. And we see for the first time Nick at his home with his mom, played by the one and only Olivia Colman. Fucking amazing woman. Came in for 2 days to film this show. And one of those most like memorable and hilarious scenes where Nick's trying to explain what happened, that he like has a date with a girl, but it's also Charlie's birthday. And she asks if he likes this girl, and he goes, well, her dog died. And Olivia's face, like, she just really goes through all the things in like half a second, and she's like, sorry, I don't follow.
Yeah.
And she deduces at this point that Charlie is a very special friend to Nick. And she's mentioned at least once before that he seems more himself when he's with Charlie than he does with his other friends. So she's started to point that out. Anyway, he goes to the party.
Wait, can we talk about that moment? Because so basically his mom is there being like, you shouldn't just date someone out of pity, and kind of is like, you can't go on this date with this girl, like it's not okay. You can tell that she's open and is kind of figuring out the Charlie Nick thing. However, I do want to mention one line she says, which I think was a really smart written line, is she tells Nick, don't worry, the right girl will come around, just you wait. And I think it was a really important line because it shows how society, we just normalize heteronormativity, and how it's just enforced even subtly. Like, she is someone who like clearly is open to however Nick identifies and is totally comfortable with it, but it's just in the way that she just naturally was like, oh, the right girl will come around. Like, and she doesn't mean anything like it. It's just in her brain. So she just says it. And so I think I actually liked that they included that in there.
I really liked that as well, because it's so subconscious, and you think that it's obvious that she'll be accepting, but you don't actually know just because of how she said that. And I think you kind of see Nick react in a similar way, where like he knows that this is his loving and supportive mom, but he maybe then again hesitates more than he would have with disclosing his feelings. Yeah, it's great because you just don't know, if you've never had that conversation, what they think. So then they're at the party. And it's super cute. It's a bowling alley with an arcade, and they're all having a great time. And Nick is really like getting along with their friends really well. And there's this fun little scene where he's sitting with Tao, but that happens later. So hold on a sec. I'm getting ahead of myself. They are bowling and flirting and having fun. Honestly, I don't know how the friends are not noticing how much Charlie and Nick are just like flirting right in front of their faces.
Oh, Isaac knows. Isaac knows, and you know that Isaac knows, but like Isaac's not going to say anything. You know?
But like Elle and Tao are so blind. Like, they're literally talking about Nick's buff rugby arms and like feeling them like in front of their friends.
Yeah.
And then Nick goes to get more drinks and snacks for people, and Charlie's in the bathroom with Tao, and Tao's telling him like he better not, like he's going to hurt you. And you can see Charlie like want to explain that they're together, but then he doesn't because he's still protecting Nick's like identity, but he just defends him as a friend. And Nick is standing at the counter overhearing all of this. And then they come out of the bathroom and have talks, and they go back to bowling, and Nick is sitting with Tao, and they have a little like, I don't trust you, I fully get that, like kind of coming to this understanding that they're both protective of Charlie.
Yep.
That's what I get out of it, right? And Tao is, as annoying as he is, like the first time I watched the show, I really did not like Tao because he's so annoying. But he is pretty hilarious, and he does do a lot of funny dancing and gestures and stuff. And then we see them at the arcade machines, and Charlie and Nick confess that they really do like each other, and they have a kiss even though they're at the arcade. And Nick gives Charlie his birthday present, which is a picture of them during their snow day with the dog, and it's so cute.
Yep.
And he like hand puts stickers on the frame for it.
And the stickers are very in like Alice Oseman graphic novel, so they're like the little leaves and hearts, and like they're very like cutesy. It just fits really in the style of the show and the graphic novel.
And he says that that was one of the best days he's ever had. That is just so cute. That's episode 4. So 5. That's episode 5.
Yep.
We're over halfway through, guys.
Yep.
The drama is coming though.
Yeah. And I still have like, I'm not saying all my comments, I still have other things to say, but I'm sure we'll have a little bit of time to get into them.
Oh, there's one more thing that happens on this one.
Oh, at the end, so while Nick and Charlie are sharing their gift and share a little kiss, Charlie leaves to go back to the friend group to continue playing games, and you see Nick text Imogen to call off the date, and we get a flash forward to the next day where he meets up with Imogen, and he kind of like, you know, he's like, you're just not the right girl for me, it's nothing to do with you.
He doesn't say girl. He just says like, I just don't see us working. I just don't feel that way about you. I don't see us
together. Yeah.
And then he goes on about like, do you ever feel with our friends like you're just sort of
an outsider?
An outsider or playing a part. And he tries to explain how he feels sometimes like he doesn't know who he is or where he belongs, but all in really vague terms. And she just genuinely, also he brings his dog to the park.
Yeah.
And
she's like, because he's like, your dog died, so I thought this might make you happy, which I'm like, I feel like it may do the opposite depending on the person, but I appreciate the sentiment behind it.
It would make me more sad. Yeah. And she genuinely, and this is why I say justice for Imogen, she genuinely sits there
and listens.
And she's like, I think I get it. And that's it. She doesn't blame him at all. It's great. Okay.
It's very well written character.
Episode 6, girls. I love girls. Sorry, that was just my gay coming out.
Okay. Nick and his... So this episode opens up with Nick and his mom having a movie night. And
Oh my god, I forgot about this scene!
And so he's like Googling LGBT movies and he's like clicking on different ones and he's like, no, can't make my mom watch any of these. She's throwing out suggestions. She's like, how about Pirates of the Caribbean? You used to love what?
She also was like, how about Mamma Mia? And he's like, we've seen that 4 times this year.
Yeah. Yeah. He does. And then she's like, how about Pirates of the Caribbean? You used to love that one. Like, we used to watch it like once a week. Or maybe she said every day. She said something ridiculous. And he was like, no, we didn't. She's like, it's because you had a crush on Keira Knightley. I know. And they're sitting watching it. And it's the moment with like Keira Knightley and Johnny Depp. And you can see
Orlando Bloom.
Oh, God. Sorry. Look, Johnny Depp's
Very
in
different.
my brain. Very different. Sorry, guys. Orlando Bloom.
And Keira Knightley.
You know what's weird is I have my notes right. My brain is just not working, guys.
It's okay.
Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley, and it's this very sweet moment.
It's sensual.
It's sensual. You see Nick like coming to reality of his like bisexuality. It's like his eyes, and then Orlando Bloom's eyes, and then Keira Knightley's eyes, and then Nick's eyes. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just like really well done.
Because it's the romantic scene between Keira and Orlando as they're looking at each other and like feeling that sensual sexual chemistry, and they're both looking fine as fuck, and Nick's like blushing and he can't take his eyes off of either of them is the very strong implication, and it's this like bisexual awakening. And everyone's favorite fact about this scene is that both Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom had to sign off on the scene being used in this show.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Which I think is super, super great.
That's funny.
And then, like, immediately Nick is next up in his room and he's, like, searching bisexuality, and he's watching videos of this one guy on YouTube talk about, like, when I first realized I was bisexual and how it's changed his life and stuff like that. Which, okay, so at this point, like, I knew I was coming into a cute gay show. I thought I was watching two boys fall in love. I was. However, I thought they were both going to be gay. 100% gay, you know? I mean, I don't know if everyone's ever... Anyway.
Yep.
I, as a bisexual, I am not used to seeing other bisexuals. And I did. And it was so this is the point in the show where I was like, wait a second. This is the story they're telling? This is everyone's story. This is so I'm none of the things I'm saying make sense anymore, but you know what I mean.
No, I completely understand, because it is one of those shows where you're like, oh, they're just going to be gay and it's going to be cute and I'm going to love it. But the representation for everyone is so vast, for like everyone on the spectrum. But like, you don't normally get a bisexual character. There's a lot of bi erasure. Like, so to get it in this show, showing a high schooler who's like athletic and straight, even though we've already had a conversation about that, but right, he's shown as being very straight, to like question his sexuality and to determine that he's bisexual. It's just really cool to watch, especially as like fully grown women that have now, like, we are comfortable and we've gone through that ourselves. But to sit here and be like, oh, if I had that in high school and I got to watch this while I was in high school, like, maybe it's something I would feel more comfortable with, or I would have felt more comfortable with when I was younger, you know? And it's not overly sexualized, which a lot of times if you do get a bi character, they're overly sexualized. It's just done really great.
In this episode, we get the bisexual videos, and then we get Charlie plays the drums. We've not gone over this yet, but Charlie plays the drums.
Yeah.
And
They're practicing.
They're practicing because there's going to be a concert of a joint orchestra between the two schools.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the rehearsal for it. And Nick comes to the rehearsal, and that's where he sees Tara again. And he tells Tara that he and Charlie are actually going out. And it's Tara's the first person that he's told. And she's like, oh, dope. Like, that's fun. And Tara recently also has come out essentially because of the making out at the party.
At this point,
also
she
on her
came
Instagram.
out. Yeah. I was going to say, at this point, she chose to come out publicly on Instagram.
Yeah. So she's come out in a couple of ways, and we see her start to struggle with that at school because people are like, oh, she's too pretty to be a lesbian on Instagram and at school. And that, like, careful, you might catch whatever lesbian virus. It's weird. But so she's kind of giving him tips, and then he meets Darcy, and she's like, cool, the gays, we should all double date sometime and get milkshakes before the concert. And Nick's like, that would be super fun. And that's something I love about Nick, is that even though he's like scared and confused and like going through it with his sexuality, he still is always down for like a good time and to delve a little bit further into this world. So then like we see that there's a group chat with him and Charlie and Tara and Darcy.
Yes.
And they're talking about how like Elle likes Tao and they should invite them on their double date, but like not tell Elle and Tao that it's a triple date. And Darcy's like, we're such messy gays. And we loved, like, she says that, and Nick's smiling. Meddling. He's not recoiling from this.
Yes.
We're such meddling gays. Yes. And so they have this double date where they go to get milkshakes. The absolute lactose of it all. Like, my 28-year-old IBS-ridden gut was turning over watching them all chug 2 milkshakes each.
Yeah. Also, like, we just have to say that this is a thing in the show, but Nick orders a bubblegum milkshake, which, like, gross.
Oh my god. Why? And Charlie roasts him for it, and then he tries Charlie's, and he's like, whoa, that's actually really good. And he's like, yeah, because I have taste.
Yeah.
And so while they're up and stuff, they're getting second round milkshakes for everyone. And Tao's still on edge about Nick because Tao's a fucking broken record. And Elle's mad at Tara and Darcy for setting this up because she doesn't want anything to change in their friendship. And Nick tries to like alleviate things by being like, well, we just thought it'd be fun to have a triple date. And Elle's like, what do you mean? And they're like, so Tara and Darcy, and you and Tao. And she's like, and you and Charlie? And they're like, uh-huh. And the only person that's not at the table is Tao.
Yeah.
And she does ask who else knows, and they say Isaac knows, and she's like, you know, Tao's gonna be really upset when he's the last to know, right? And they're like, yeah, I know, I'm just looking for the right time.
And I love in this moment because it's kind of like Nick sharing it, but Elle immediately looks at Charlie and is like, squeals and is like, oh my god, I'm so excited for you. Like, and completely disregards Nick, and all her excitement as a friend is just funneled into Charlie, and she's so happy for her. And you just feel all the emotions of a friend, like, just being like, oh my god, this guy who all of us thought you never had a chance with actually is with you, and this is just like so great, and I'm so stoked. And it's just like awesome. Like, it's such a cute little like 30-second scene.
She's sitting next to Nick. She's across the table from Charlie. Charlie's beaming because Nick led into this revelation. And she grabs Charlie's hand across the table, squeals with him, and then after she's done, she like turns to Nick and she's like, sorry, but you did not have to deal with the months of pining. We get to the concert quickly. Charlie keeps being like, you don't have to go. And Nick's like, well, I want to go, so shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
But he doesn't say it like that, but he's just like being
Yeah.
a very cute, supportive boyfriend. They go to the concert, and Tara overhears someone say something about like, careful, the lesbian virus, whatever. And she's like upset. And so she goes, also, they literally show up 15 minutes before the concert. My band teacher would have never allowed that shit. You show up an hour beforehand. Are you kidding me?
Well, my thing is, think about, like, okay, obviously I didn't do band concerts, but I'm just thinking about, like, plays and musicals and shit. You're there, like, 3 hours before showtime.
Yeah. Band, you're there a minimum an hour before you go on.
Yeah.
Because you have to set up, you have to warm up, you have to make sure you're in the right outfit, all this
They
shit.
literally show up, like, 5 minutes before.
I know. And then to top it all off, she leaves, goes into their music room at their school where and Darcy follows her, and she's like, I just wish like things could be normal, and like she doesn't regret coming out, but she's upset about the way that people are treating her, and it's been difficult. And the door
It's just
closes.
too much change, and she wasn't expecting things to change.
Yes, and the door closes, and it automatically locks. And this is apparently where they first made out, and they start making out again, and the show's about to start. And so the other friends are all running through the halls, very like Breakfast Club style. It's a very it's quintessential teenage shit where they're just like through the halls shouting for them, looking for them, and they find them. And it's really funny because when they break up the kissing, Darcy goes, homophobia, because it's like they've broken up the two girls kissing, and that's one of those lines she likes to use.
Yeah, it's very cute.
Yeah.
And then they have the concert, and that's that episode.
And it does not sound good, but yeah.
No.
Episode 7 is the angstiest fucking shit. It's called Bully, which tells you it's going to be the angstiest fucking shit. So Nick invites Charlie to the movies, and he's like, it's going to be chill because Ben and Harry aren't invited. And he's going, and his dad is like, be careful. Let me know if you need me to come. And he's like, don't worry, Nick's going to be there. And who the fuck else is there? Guess what? It's Ben and Harry. Which I don't know if I said Charlie before. I meant Harry. Ben and Harry are not coming. Well, of course, they actually are.
Yep.
So they're like, Harry's on his normal shit, and they're watching the movie.
Wait, okay, before they're watching the movie, sorry, I'm interrupting. So before they're watching the movie, Nick and Charlie are standing in line to get popcorn, and Charlie's like, I'm not hungry, but you get whatever you want. And Nick looks at Charlie and goes, Char, are you okay? And then Charlie's like, Char? And Nick's like, oh my god, I didn't say that. And he's like, it was cute. Say it again. And it's a very cute, flirty moment in like a stressful, uncomfortable scene. And it's just, it deserved a shout out.
And Nick's like, well, now I'm never saying it again.
Yeah.
It is very cute and flirty and shows how they're progressing.
Yeah.
And then they're sitting in the theater and they hold hands in the cover of darkness, which is very teenage. Like I did that as well. And Ben, being the fucking creeper that he is sitting behind them and like sees them.
Yeah.
And then they get out of the movie and Harry's on his shit being like, what's it like to be gay? What's your type? Do you think Nick's cute? And he's like, Nick's not even my type. Like, whatever. And Charlie storms off, and so we see two things. We see Charlie storm off to the car, get in the car with his dad, who he called in, but before he gets into the car, Ben shows up. From behind
Did
a car.
he run there?
In the darkness.
Yeah. He literally teleported. It's the only way he could have got there.
I saw you and Nick holding hands.
He's like, are you with him now?
I could tell everyone. And Charlie's like, well, I could tell everyone about you, but I wouldn't do that because I'm not a shitty person.
Yep.
And he's like, no one likes you. I was just with you out of pity. Like, blah, 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 blah. Like, just really gross. And then the car, Charlie's dad shows up and he gets in the car. Thank goodness. Sidebar, or at the same time, Nick is fucking pissed at Harry. He's like, yo, you're being fucking homophobic.
Mhm.
And Harry's like, calm down, it's just a joke. Charlie knows it's just a joke.
Yeah.
And they get in a fight, and Nick like pushes him, and then Harry punches him, and then we see Nick in the
Oh no, Nick throws the first punch. I think that should be
okay.
very, very clear. Yeah, Nick 100% throws the first punch, and then they get into a fight.
And then we see Nick in the car with his mom, and he looks a little worse for wear. And his mom's like, violence is never the answer. And he's like, he was saying some really bad stuff.
Yeah,
I think he actually used the word fag,
yeah,
Harry.
he
He
did.
called Charlie a fag. And so that's when Nick threw the punch. And
Mhm.
he alludes to that to his mom. And his mom's like, I see. Charlie's a very special friend, isn't he?
Yes.
And that's, yeah, it's very, very angsty. And then we get to school.
Mhm.
Do you want to cover school? I don't remember school as well.
Oh, I didn't really write that many notes about school. Oh no.
we
Okay,
get to
but we
no,
get. Oh, I do know. We get to school, and they're in form, and they always have this cute little thing we've never mentioned, but they always say hi to each other, and it's very cute. And so then they sit down, and Nick turns towards Charlie, and Charlie sees Nick's black eye, and he immediately goes, "What happened?" And it's just great. And so then
he's
Nick,
like Mama Bear. He's like, what did you do?
yeah, and Nick explains what happened, and Charlie takes the same stance as everyone that violence isn't the answer, and like, you don't need to do that. I'm used to this. Like, I deal with it all the time. I've dealt with it. Like, it's my normal. You don't need to fight for me. And Nick's like, yeah, but it shouldn't be. Like, you shouldn't have to deal with any of this.
Which is a novel concept to Charlie.
Yeah, he just. And even in that moment, you can tell that does not comprehend. Charlie would rather continue with status quo than to have people challenging it.
Yeah.
Um,
And while all of this, I mean, for a while now, we've been seeing moments where Tao is particularly like sensitive to what's going on. He doesn't trust Nick. He doesn't trust Harry at all. And
No.
Harry's a dick. And Harry will say shit to Tao like, oh, looking for your boyfriend, or I don't even remember the other ones, but he says shit to Tao, and we see Tao standing up against him, and like, oh my god, Tao bothers me so much, but there are moments where he just brings out the best fucking one-liners.
Yeah, his lines are great.
He's like, if you wanted physical contact that much, you could have just asked. Like he's
Yeah.
like just because your mother didn't hug you as a child or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
He throws a lot of great lines, but this time it goes a little too far, and he and Harry then end up in a fight.
Yeah, and to preface this, before this happens, there's a moment where Elle shares with Tao that Charlie and Nick are going out, and Tao's like, when did you know this? And Elle was like, well, I found out when we had milkshakes. And Tao's like, that was ages ago. Like, he still hasn't told me. And Tao is like really upset about this. And in this moment, he really only feels that his like true friend that's left in the friend group is Elle, and he's feeling a lot of like animosity and negative emotions towards the rest of the friend group. And so he's
not really towards Isaac, but I think
not towards Isaac, but Isaac's just kind of aloof. He's just reading a book, but mostly towards Charlie. And so Tao is also ignoring Charlie. Not also. Tao is ignoring Charlie.
Tao's ignoring Charlie, and Charlie's
ignoring Nick
and kind of trying to break up with him. Especially after he finds out about this fight between Nick and Harry.
And so we get this scene where Nick and Charlie are sitting inside at lunch, and Tao's like, hey, can you join me for lunch? Like, Isaac has to do something. I don't remember what. He has to do something, volunteer or something. And he's like, I told Nick I would get lunch with him, but I'll meet you right after. And he's like, don't even bother. Like, we're barely even friends anymore. And then you see this scene of Nick and Charlie talking, and Charlie is clearly trying to break things off. is like, I've caused too many changes to your life. Now you're getting into fights. Like, it would just be better if we weren't together. But before he can get to that point, the entire school erupts, and there's a fight going on outside. Harry's fighting with some year 10, blah, blah, blah. And so then they all run outside. And this is where we see Tao and Harry fighting.
Yes, and while Nick and Charlie are having that conversation, Nick says something like, I'm not sure I want to be friends with those guys anymore. And Charlie says, I don't expect you to just drop all of your friends for me. And I really liked those moments. It happens a couple of times where Nick is very clearly rethinking his friendships, and you shouldn't drop all your friends for a relationship, but you should recognize when your friendships are no longer serving you and you feel like you're not being your true self with them. And that's really kind of like the dichotomy here, where Charlie thinks it's one thing and Nick's really going through another. And that's a bit of a back and forth. Yeah. And Charlie feels like between the fight that Harry has with Nick and then the fight that Harry has with Tao, that he's ruining everyone's life, which he literally says to his sister Tori, who we've yet to mention, but she is a hilarious character. She's so fucking funny. She's always in the background throwing in the best one-liners. She has the driest humor in the show. And so he tells her that he, like, these things have been happening, these fights, and like,
wait, but that's not till the next episode.
Oh, my bad.
So,
okay, so what happens
sorry.
in this one?
So
Tao and Harry fight.
Yes.
Is that it?
That's it. Because, hold on, let me make... Yeah, that happens in the next episode too. Yeah, but they get into a fight, and that's really the kind of the end of the episode. That's all I have.
Okay.
But it does culminate in Charlie. You see Charlie having this feelings of like putting a lot of self-blame for other people's actions.
Yes. And there's a bit with Tao and Elle as well. And Tao's like, I've been antagonizing Harry. I maybe shouldn't have, whatever, blah, blah, blah.
And Elle's like, no shit, doofus.
She's like, Harry's a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
Episode 8. Boyfriend.
And this is the last episode.
All of these episodes are about 40 minutes long. Episode 8 is like
23 to like 38 minutes. Some of them are on the shorter, some of them are longer, but they all, if you averaged it out, I would say the average episode's 30 minutes.
Okay. Episode 8 feels longer because so much is like shoved into it. So we kind of start with... I
feel that with every episode, especially now that we're recapping. I'm like, holy shit, there's so much going on. They were able to incorporate so many little worlds.
And we have to, we didn't need to go into as much detail as we have, but we kind of like have to because there's so much going on. And at the same time, we're still skipping over
like 50%.
Yeah. So we open up with what I was talking about earlier, where Charlie's not doing well and he's talking to his sister Tori about like, did you hear about those fights? Like, those were my fault. And she's like, I wasn't even there, and I'm like 99% sure that those were both Harry's fault.
Yeah. The exact line is, I'm like 95% sure they were both Harry's fault, and I wasn't even there. You're like, yes, Tori. Snaps to you.
And he says that he feels like he's ruining everyone's life, and we get this touching moment where she's like, you're not ruining my life, and they hug. And before this, he was like jamming on the drums, like getting his anger out.
Yeah.
Which I think is hilarious because I did learn, side note, that Joe Locke got drumming lessons from Netflix and was still so bad that they had to get a drumming double. And like, I would not have known if you were good or bad. Like, you did not have to, but okay.
Yeah.
And it's sports day at school, and it's angsty as fucking shit because he's trying to break up with Nick, and Tao's basically broken up with him, and it's the boys and girls schools are together,
Yeah.
for this, and Elle's
And
like,
it's the first time that Elle's going back to Truum after leaving, so there's a lot of emotion there.
yeah, and Tao and Nick have a conversation like, why is Charlie avoiding you? Well, actually, I'm avoiding him. And they're like, don't realize they're both kind of on the outs with Charlie. And Tao says, just openly tells Nick, like, I'm upset that like he should have told me sooner. And Nick's like, I think he just really like cares so much about your opinion that he wanted to tell you at the right time.
Yeah.
And Tao tells Nick that, like, I know Charlie's like really understanding, but he's not gonna want to be a secret forever. He's not that kind of guy.
Yeah.
um
Yeah, and he kind of goes into more detail too, where he's like, he's never going to force you to come out, which is good. But also, like, he probably wants to be more than like secret guy you kiss on the down low sometimes. Like that,
that's
like
like the
he's,
exact line.
yeah, it is. It's, he's like, he's never going to tell you that, and he's never going to ask for that, but it's going to make him feel like shit if that's all he is to you.
Yeah. And Nick really feels that.
Mhm.
He tells Tao, you should also talk to Charlie, and he's like, no. Tao tells Nick to talk to Charlie. Okay. Nick tells Tao to talk to Charlie. No, I'm still mad at him. And then it's sports day, and it's angsty, and Charlie's on this mission to, like, I don't know, fix all of these things by making things go back to how they were. I honestly don't know how Charlie's feeling at this point, other than like upset about it all. I know that Tao is the only year 10 who did not sign up for a sport.
Yeah.
And they have this hilarious the principal is Stephen Fry doing a voiceover, and you hear this intercom of him being like, if you didn't sign up for a sport, Miss, I forgot her name, but the PE teacher will murder you. And he's like, I've been told she will not murder you, but she will not be happy. Anyway, he does this little quirky thing, and she tells Tao that he has to run. Well, Tao doesn't run. Tao's not a runner. No. And Charlie shows up right around that time, and so he switches jerseys with Tao. He's like, let me do it. And this is like him extending an olive branch, and Tao accepts. And surprise, surprise, who's in the run? Ben. Ben, the asshole.
Yep.
And Charlie smokes him in the race because he's super fast. And at the end, Ben is on the ground panting, and he had been saying some shit. When Charlie showed up, he was like, what are you stalking me?
Yeah.
Are you obsessed with me? And so when they finish, Charlie stands over him and he says something like, you're not allowed to speak to me ever again. Just because you hate yourself doesn't mean that I have to feel that way, or that you can hate me, or something like that.
Yeah. Well, and there's this great moment where you see like Charlie step into his power, where Ben is like, well, I can just tell people about you and Nick then. And he's like, okay, well then I can tell people about me and you, but I wouldn't do that because I'm not a terrible person. Like, just because you hate yourself doesn't mean you need to hate me. Like, I'm not letting you walk all over me. And this is you see Charlie try to step up to Ben multiple times throughout the series, but this is really the time that he fully is owning, like, I'm not taking his shit anymore.
And then we see there's this big rugby match that's coming, and the rugby team always has to do it. Well, before sports day, finding this out, Charlie quits the rugby team, so he doesn't have to. And he's standing up like in the crowd watching, and
like on top of a bench, so he's like higher up than everyone else.
And Nick can see him, and he's playing, but he's distracted. And not long into the game, he just like drops the ball, whatever you call it. I don't fucking know about rugby.
A ball, I don't know.
And goes over and just grabs Charlie's hand in front of the whole school. And we get this great little shot of Imogen smiling as they walk off. I really thought it was going to be bigger. I thought it was going to be like a makeout or something like that, like a big proclamation. But instead, he just grabs his hand and takes him into a hallway, which I think is so lovely and subtle and unexpected, because we're used to these like big grand shows, and like it would have it would have ended on the makeout if it were just like a rom-com, you know?
Mhm.
But he takes him into the hallway, and Nick's like, stop trying to break up with me. I don't want to break up with you.
Mhm.
And Charlie's like, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, no, I need you to hear this. You
Mhm.
are the most wonderful,
Mhm.
kind-hearted person I've
Mhm.
ever met, and I need you in my life. And like, really, really hear this. And Charlie's like, okay, I do. And then
Mhm.
they make out. And he's like, look at us. We're kissing in the hallway. And Nick's like, oh, look, we are. Fancy that.
Mhm. And then we get Nick taking Charlie to a surprise date to the beach.
On a train. It's like out of the way.
Yeah, they take a train, and then he's like covering his eyes, and then he hears seagulls, and he's like, oh my god, we're at the beach, and they're like racing to the sand, and you have them both lying out in the sun and kind of having conversations. And this is when Nick's like, I think I want to tell people. Like, I don't want to tell everyone, but I definitely want like people in our life to know. I don't want to have to keep this hidden anymore.
And this is when he says, I'm pretty sure I'm bisexual. He mentioned it in episode 5, I think,
Yeah,
or 6, when they're doing the concert. He says, like,
on the
I've
park.
been looking into bisexuality, and I think that might be me. And so in this one, he says, like, I'm pretty sure I'm bisexual, and like I'm ready to start telling people.
Mm-hmm. And then they have a very, very cute moment where they're standing in the water, and I don't even know how it starts, but Charlie asks, like, does this mean we're boyfriends? And Nick's like, yeah, hello, we've made out like 10 times.
Oh,
Uh,
you don't remember how they get to the water?
no.
No. Charlie is like, does this mean you really like me? And he's like, was that not obvious the last 10 times we made
No,
out?
that's when he said, does this mean we're boyfriends? And that's when Nick's response is, wasn't that obvious the last 10 times we made out?
No, 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 no.
Yes, it is. I know that for a fact.
Okay, well, there's another, was that not obvious? And Nick picks Charlie up. And this is one of those Heartstopper moments that's taken verbatim from the text. And he runs with Charlie in the water into the water in his fucking Vans, which is the only crime Nick Nelson has ever committed. And he's holding him and he shouts, I like Charlie Spring. And
well,
in a
okay,
romantic
I
way,
remember this
10.
part. I meant prior to that, how they got to the scene where they were talking about boyfriends.
No,
but
they
I
do
know
that. And then as he's holding Charlie, Charlie's like, does this mean we're boyfriends? And he's like, yeah. And then he's like, we're boyfriends.
Yeah. I don't think that is the flow of it, but that's okay.
That is the flow.
All those things happen, but I don't think they happen in that order.
They do. Okay, we had some technical difficulties, but jumping back into it, we had our delightful date. We were literally at the end of the series, and practicing what he preaches, Nick goes to his mom, and we have this really, really lovely coming out scene. Do you want to talk about it? Because her face looks like you want to talk about it.
So cute. Nick makes himself a cup of tea and sits down with his mom. And he's just like, you know how you say that, like, Charlie's a really special friend? Well, he is. We're actually boyfriends. And he explains that, you know, they've been dating for a few months. And she goes in and gives him, like, a big hug, and it's really sweet. And he explains that he's bisexual, and his mom's like, you know, you don't have to say that, like, it's okay if you're
She's
gay.
like, it's okay if you don't like girls.
Yeah. And he's like, no, I definitely like girls, which I like that he's like reinforcing his sexuality there. I appreciate they included that. And she's like, okay. And she's like, I'm sorry if I ever made you feel like you couldn't share that. There's also a funny moment where he's like, bisexuality, have you heard of it? And she's like, yeah, no shit.
She's like, I wasn't born in the 1800s. And she actually played a character in the 1800s or the 18th century that was also bisexual, so it's kind of funny.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't know that. That's really funny. But it's a very, very sweet moment between the two of them. And then you kind of just get like, it ends off with just like a little bit of a recap of Charlie and Nick's like romance. A montage.
Mm-hmm. And that's the end of Heartstopper.
Mm-hmm.
This show was so much more wholesome and lovely than anything I expected it to be.
Yep.
And I didn't expect him to be bisexual. And I just really, really appreciated that.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing like queer characters all have these romantic plot lines and not be sexualized at all. And something I really appreciated, so we got kind of three couples and we see sort of reciprocated feelings. We have Tara, Darcy, Charlie, and Nick, but we also have Tao and Elle, and we see reciprocated feelings between them. And even though Tao's been Elle's friend since before she transitioned, we still see him get feelings for her. And I found that so, so, so refreshing to see a romanticization of a trans girl.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that.
It is just such a beautiful, well written, well adapted to TV like representation of queer joy. And we get
Yes.
a lot of representation in media of queer stories that are sad or tragic or focus on the bad parts, and like
The
that's
trauma.
the trauma, and that's a reality of it too, and we shouldn't like not share those stories. I think it's also important to share those stories, but I think it's equally as important to show queer joy. And this show just does it so well, and it's so wholesome. And I wish it existed when I was in high school.
Hmm.
I truly do.
I know a lot of people describe it as sort of an answer to Euphoria, which is also known as being a teenage show with a lot of queer representation. But it is the angsty, dramatic queer representation that involves a lot of trauma and assault and things that, yes, are very real in the community. But I think what's so beautiful about Heartstopper is because it's so realistic, we're showing not just that the representation doesn't have to be that way, but that the experience, the lived experience doesn't have to be that way. That, the generations before us worked so hard for queer rights, and it's so that Gen X or Gen Z and later generations can
Mm-hmm.
be themselves and be comfortable being themselves. And yes, there is still bullying because we don't yet live in a perfect world, but they're still educated enough to get
Mm-hmm.
there and to feel comfortable getting there.
Yeah, I think that's what it does so well, is that it doesn't there's still mention, and it still shows a little bit of the bullying. There's some like struggle with mental health. There's the battle of coming to terms with sexuality. Like it makes all these things apparent, but that's not the main focus of the show. The main focus of the show is queer joy. And I think everyone deserves to watch a story like that and know that these are like real stories that exist.
Yeah. This is definitely the kind of show that I would have liked to see growing up.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a more conservative household, and we're both from California. We lived through the voting on Prop 8, and before that, when everyone was rushing to San Francisco to get married. And um, I remember my parents voted yes on Prop 8, and I didn't know at the time how I felt about gay people. And I asked my brother, and like our stance was kind of like, well, that it doesn't like affect us. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like they're doing their thing. So what does it matter? But it wasn't really understanding. And like, I think even if I weren't queer, like as a queer person, I do love seeing this. But I think even back then, when I didn't know I was queer, it would have been a valuable educational resource.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
And and I kind of want to touch on that wholesome representation and the way that the families are so good, because like I lived in Korea for a few years, and Korea is quite homophobic, quite closeted and conservative, because they have a really strong Christian hold in the cities. And because of that, like I was tutoring someone who was in their 30s, and she was great. She was pretty open-minded, but she didn't really think about that stuff. And when she saw Call Me by Your Name,
Mm.
which has the cannibal actor, but still is a lovely, lovely film, and she saw how in that movie the parents accepted their son as a gay man, as a gay boy, because he's 17. She realized that was the first time that she had seen a homosexual identity being okay and
Mm.
not causing drama or
Mm.
problems in the family unit, and realized that it could be like an acceptable thing and whatnot. And that's why shows like this are so important, so that the kids, the people experiencing it, don't feel like their only option is trauma and betrayal, and so that people who don't understand us can see it and not think and realize that it doesn't have to be so hard. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not
Yeah.
exactly coherent, but
No. I completely get it. That I think it's still something, as you said, that in different places in the world and in even certain places in our country,
most
I
places in the world.
yeah, um, they're used to the story of like or knowing and thinking that it wouldn't be accepted or it would be just that it wouldn't be accepted. So to have these stories where all the families are very, very accepting and understanding, I think is important for others to see. But also, I do think it's as important to share the opposite side of the spectrum, because not everyone gets to come out and it's this beautiful, great thing. Like sometimes it's really, really awful. So I think it's important that we have both reflected in media. But I would say up until like recently, a large amount of stories were not sharing the positive side or accepting families, and we're only showing the other side.
And this is a common thing with minority identities. Like, it's similar, I think, to how when we learn for Black History Month, we primarily learn about slavery. Like, by and large, the narrative of Black history in America is about slavery.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about the Harlem Renaissance and
Yeah.
the jazz age, and about all of like the Black joy and the way that Black people have helped lift up this country in different industries.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to talk about slavery,
Yeah. But
but
it's
it's also important to not overshadow and just create this identity of shared trauma.
yep,
So
100%.
I think that is similar with the queer community, and this idea of like being ostracized and traumatized because of your identity, and you can't possibly have a happy life.
Mm-hmm.
And instead we just get these cute little kids who are so happy to just like each other and be
Yeah.
liked.
Yeah. So cute.
Um
And I'm so excited that it got renewed for not one, but 2 seasons. So well deserved.
mhm.
Like, Alice deserves to share their entire story and the entire story of Heartstopper. But the fact that it's a guaranteed 2 seasons is like so awesome for her, but also so awesome for the fans.
Absolutely. I cried multiple times the first time I watched this. Did you?
Um, I'm someone who like it's really hard for me to
It's hard for me
cry
too.
until I have like an emotional connection to it. So I actually teared up more my third and fourth time watching it, because then I felt a connection to the show than I did my
Mm.
first time. And that's pretty normal for me. Like if I watch a show once, I'm probably not going to cry. On the second or third time, I'm like bawling and I'm like, you've already seen this. What's happening?
I'm like, I cry when things are happy.
Oh, yeah.
So I started tearing up the first couple of times when I saw like Nick discovering who he
Yeah.
was, and I was just
Oh,
like, oh. Oh, it's so precious.
It is.
I just have to say we did not talk about Miss Tori nearly enough. We did not have the time, but she is truly iconic.
I have to say,
Like,
my favorite character. I don't think I appreciated her enough the first time I watched it, but now that I've seen it many times, she's by far my favorite character. I
is
need
she?
more of Tori. I know that I should have written down the name. One of Alice's books fully follows Tori's
Love that.
story, and it starts about a year after where Heartstopper starts.
Mm-hmm.
And follows like her battle with mental health and things like that. So I definitely want to read that. But I just love Tori. Like when she comes in, when like at the beginning when Charlie's like, "Oh, I broke up with my boyfriend," referring to Ben, and she's just like, "Was he a knob? Good on
Mm-hmm.
ya." Like she's just so.
And then at the end of the second episode, when Nick and Charlie have had their movie date, Charlie's standing there in a blanket, and Nick's like, "You look so cuddly right now." And he's like, "Do I?" And then they have this really long hug,
Yeah.
and you just see her in the background. As soon as Nick leaves, she goes, "I don't think he's straight."
Uh-huh.
And it's just so good. And then, of course, Nick is like, "So, what does it mean if a super straight guy hugs you for like 10 seconds or
Seconds.
more?"
Yeah. She's just like she's one of those that just like grew on me, and I'm like, I need more Tori like now. She's amazing.
I loved her the first time I watched it. I was.
Where I had the opposite experience with Tao. He didn't
Mhm.
really bother me the first time I watched it. Every other time I've watched it since, he just gets more and more on my nerves, and I think he's a horrible friend.
That's interesting because I hated him the first time I watched it. And the subsequent viewings, I was like able to understand him better.
No, I feel like I've had the opposite experience.
I haven't read the comics like you have, but I heard that he is the reason Charlie got outed on accident.
That is true.
And so I get why he's so like protective over Charlie and worried about things and like bums that he wasn't told. Like he's worried that maybe Charlie doesn't trust him anymore. So I get that.
And in the comic, it does kind of dive more into like why Tao is the last to know, and a lot of it is connected to the fact that he's like loud and bubbly, and Charlie doesn't blame him for being for outing him because it wasn't intentional, it was accidental, but he also like still knows that that's why he got outed, so he's a little more protective to share it with Tao, and that's just like not. Maybe we'll get into that more in the next 2 seasons, but that's not the focus of the Netflix series, and it's not really shared in the Netflix series, but it does give a little more background on the why Tao acts the way he does, but I still just don't think he's a good friend.
I don't really think he is either, and it gets annoying how he harps on this like everything's changing, the friend group is changing. Like, yeah, bro, you're fucking 15.
Well, and he treats his mom like a piece of shit.
Does he? I just thought he was like embarrassed by his mom, because everyone's embarrassed by their mom at that age.
I don't know. I feel like he's so embarrassed and so dismissive, and his mom's just trying to be nice and sweet, and he just acts like she doesn't exist at all, and I just feel so like bad for his mom.
Also, shout out to Tao's mom, another example of the families being accepting, because she's there when Elle shows up a couple of times, and the second time is when Tao and Elle are starting to realize they have feelings for each other, and she very clearly clocks this so fast because she's like, be sure to leave the door open.
Yeah. So funny.
I have to say, I love everyone. I truly do. I like all the characters. I like Tao the least, but I do like all the characters. I wanted to like be 100% behind Charlie. I love him. I have no doubt in him. I just like between Charlie and Nick. Like if I'm going to choose one, I want to choose Charlie. because he's sweet and he's pure, and he's the awkward kid that, like, he's the underdog and you gotta root for him. But, like, Nick is just such a golden retriever. Like, I was like, I don't wanna like the popular boy who's, like, clearly the most conventionally attractive in the cast and all of that, but, like, he's truly just the sweetest puppy
Mm-hmm.
dog who,
Mm-hmm.
like, doesn't want anyone to have to feel hurt and wants to look after Charlie and is considerate and understanding, and I just really love Nick Nelson.
Mm-hmm. I get it. Well, and he's supposed to be lovable, right? Like that is
Mhm.
his entire personality trait. So like it just shows that they've done so well with casting and so well with portraying those characters. I think everyone does a really great job, but I do really think that Sebastian Croft and Kit Connor kind of hold up the cast from
Yeah.
an acting front. I think all around the acting is really well for most of these people, it being their first real acting job. I think it's phenomenal, but
Mhm.
you really did need the people who had a little bit of experience on a set to kind of push the rest of the characters along. And we kind of mentioned this before, but the soundtrack to this show is so amazing. And a
So good.
reason it's so amazing is because a lot of the show, in true bringing a graphic novel to life fashion, there's not a lot of dialogue. There are many scenes that don't have any dialogue or
Mm.
have few back and forths of like maybe 3 or 4 words each. And that's the entire dialogue within the scene. And it's all carried through music and showing the story. And so I think, given that it was a lot of the actors' first time, they actually did a really good job because they couldn't just carry themselves with lines. They had to have facial expressions and body expressions and really like be themselves and be the characters in the scenes.
Mhm.
And then they used really lovely music to kind of carry the story along.
Yeah. It's and there's they also stay true to the set for the graphic novels, so a lot of it looks like I've heard Charlie's bedroom
Charlie's room is
looks
exactly the same.
identical.
Hmm.
There's
All the
also
bedrooms.
we've not touched on this at all, but Charlie, I don't know why I said Harry. Charlie seeks solace in the art room and gets a lot of help
Oh,
from the gay art teacher, or yeah, he is the gay art teacher. And the art room looks the same as in the comics. It has this beautiful tree painted on the ground. It's
mhm,
like coming out of a corner, and we regularly see Charlie sitting in there. Um, it's really, really lovely. And that's
mhm,
also a nice teacher, a nice character. We just didn't
mhm,
have enough to say about him. He's really just
mhm.
there to provide guidance.
If it's anything like the comics, we will get more of him in the next 2 seasons, and I'm very excited for it.
Love that.
Yeah. His story gets explored more, so I definitely think that will be included in the next 2 seasons.
Love that. Do we have anything else to
Just
say?
that it's amazing and you should go watch it. And if you've already watched it, you should watch it again.
Mm-hmm.
And you should let us know your thoughts and if there's any like of your favorite moments that we didn't touch on or anything that we missed. I would like love to know what you think because it's just such an amazing queer show and I'm just so glad it exists and I just love it.
Also, as a couple of bisexuals, we're always happy to get recommendations for queer shows that you guys are loving.
Yeah.
So I know Jessica's been loving Young Royals, and
Mhm.
now she's watching Love Victor.
Mhm. I'm
I
also watching Elite, which I would not say is a queer show, but it does have some queer romance. I don't know how I
mm,
feel about it. It's like a sexy murder high school show is like
yeah,
the
it's like
genre. Have you ever
Gossip
watched
Girl.
it?
No, but my understanding is it's like Gossip Girl meets Pretty Little Liars in Spanish.
Exactly. And I don't know how I feel about it. So if anyone, I'm like almost done with season 1, about to start season 2. So if anyone's like on season 5 of Elite, tell me, should I keep watching? I don't know.
And I recently started First Kill, which is
Oh, is it
it's
good?
it's like kind of camp. I'm enjoying it. You
Okay.
have to like adjust your expectations because it is a little cringy sometimes, like the graphics and the writing, but they fully commit to the bit, which is why I think of it as more like camp and a little almost soap opera-y.
Yeah.
Like people are like really getting into it,
Okay.
and I'm definitely gonna like finish it. Like I want to see where it goes, and
And it's
that's
lesbian vampires.
so it's a young lesbian vampire who is attracted to a girl from a long line of monster hunters. And I thought they were just vampire hunters, but there are other monsters, and that's where the bad graphics come in. But so, like, the
Okay.
vampire loves the monster hunter. The monster hunter wants to kill the vampire, but also is kind of into her, and it's great.
Okay. Well, when you finish it, let me know if I should watch it. But if you have any other recommendations, let us know. If you enjoyed us switching it up and doing something different, also let us know. I thought this was really refreshing and I enjoyed it. So I think Amanda and I will probably continue to
Continue.
do this every now and again. Because
Mm-hmm.
guess what? This show's for us, guys. That's who.
It's our passion project. And if we ain't feeling the passion, the project ain't happening.
Yeah,
So,
as shown in the last 2 months. Um, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed this and give us a follow on all our social media. We're 90s Babies Nostalgia on YouTube and on Instagram. Spell out the word 90s. And be sure to rate and review because that really helps our podcast. So I would really appreciate if you took the 2 seconds to go ahead and do that. And
mm-hmm.
other than that, we'll see you in the next one. I don't know what we're going to do. Maybe Phil of the future, maybe something else. It will be a
We haven't
surprise.
decided. Yeah. And thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.